Hey guys, this is Ed from Mission Impossible. Welcome back to my Let's Make EdVenture series, where we're going through and creating a roguelike on the Atari 8-bit. We're using assembly language, and we're going to be doing some procedural generation today. We're going to be creating some maps, and we're going to be doing some random numbers. So let's get into it. Okay, let's get into how we're going to do this map generation. Ray and I sat down and tried to figure out an easy way to do the procedural map generation. The typical ways are very random as far as they put rooms in all different locations, and then they put hallways joining them. And the problem with that is pretty complex in that we don't have a lot of cycles that we want to use. We don't want to have a lot of code to be able to make sure we don't have missing paths and rooms and such like that. We want to make sure we can get to all the rooms, and we want to make sure we can find our exit, etc. So what we came up with is a very simple way of doing it, and that is doing a grid of rooms. And each room is going to be connected with doors, one or more doors. So what we want to do here is we want to have we want to have a big map. So as we were saying earlier, and so what we're going to do is we're going to have rooms that are 15 by 15, and then we're going to have those in a grid of 8 by 8. So if you think about it, it's going to be 15 plus a door, 15 plus a door, 15 plus a door, etc. So we're going to have 129 tiles across and 129 tiles below. And that is kind of a weird number, but that's what I was talking about when it was over 16K. And another aspect of this is we're also going to need to have a border. And the border is so that the player can't get too close to the edge. Now, in the future, we're going to have the ability to do some raycasting and to make sure that we don't hit that last part of the map on the edges. But for now, we need to have a border in there. But first, we're going to want to load in our rooms data, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and create a rooms file. And we're going to copy in the first room, at least. Okay. Now, this 127 is our floor tile. So the idea is we're going to first, before we start putting in the rooms, we're going to fill the entire map with walls. Then what we're going to do is put these floor tiles in there, and that will make it so it's a walkable surface. So there's 127 is our floor, and we have 15 by 15 in here. So that's 225 bytes for each room. Now, we want to have different types of rooms. Now, this is going to be a very basic square room, but if we want to have something like a round room or an L shape or all different kinds of shapes, if we want to do some interesting things, we want to have a bunch of different rooms to choose from. So what we've chosen is to use 16 rooms, and then we'll choose between those 16. That makes it a nice round number. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the rest of these in. So for right now, these rooms are going to all be the same, okay? And that's okay. We have this, gotta go here, boom. It's not what I wanted. Let's see. There we go. Okay, these are all going to be the same, and that's okay. We just want to get the start of it going so that we can make sure that we get that part working. Then we can go in here and tweak some of the rooms. So let's go ahead and load in the rooms data. So I'm going to say ICL rooms. And we also need to allocate where it's going to be. So I am going to put rooms at A000, okay? Rooms. And it needs 3,600 bytes, okay? Because 225 times 16 is 3,600. So that's actually quite a bit. That's over 3K. for these rooms. One thing that's nice about this is eventually, if we are running into space issues, we can do some compression on this because these rooms will compress really well. So we'll get into that later on, but that'll be a good way of saving some ROM space. So we've got that, we've got it loading in, and now we need to do something with it. So now let's go ahead and create our map gen stuff. So I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna create a new file called map gen. I'm gonna say new map, okay? And I'm gonna go just do an empty function right now. And we wanna call it at the beginning, up here. So we wanna do this probably before everything else. But there's one more thing we should probably do before even this, and that is we want to seed the random number generator. The big thing here is we don't want the random number generator to be set to 0. That causes problems. So we don't want the seed to be set to 0. We want to have it be a value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an MVA, and I'm just going to put a number like 1, 2, 3 into rand. Okay, just so that we see the random number generator. We'll get into a better way of doing that later on, but for now, the good thing about this is we know that it's going to be deterministic. We're always going to have the same seed value, always going to have the same random numbers, and that's okay because that will make it so we can test a lot easier. When you're dealing with random numbers, you don't want them to be actually random until you make sure that everything is working properly, because otherwise, if it's actually different every time, you don't know if your code's actually working. So first we're going to see the random number generator, then we're going to do the new map. So the first thing we're going to want to do in this new map is we're going to want to fill the map with walls, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and create a new procedure called fill map. I'll go ahead and call it here. And what we're going to be doing with this is we're going to be filling the entire map with walls. And so that's going to be, if you remember, that's going to be tile number 1 in our tile map. And so we can actually go ahead and create a equate for that. I'm just going to preface them with map underscore. I'm just going to call it map wall. Okay. And in map gen, we're going to say, let's load in the file. Okay. So first off, we're going to set up the map pointer here. So we're going to say map pointer. Very typical thing that we just always do. Then we're going to load in the wall character, or the wall tile, into A, which is basically just 1. We could just use the number 1, but this looks it's a lot more obvious on what we're doing. LDY, we're just going to reset these guys because we're going to be looping. Loop. So we're going to the first thing we're going to do is we're going to store this into the map pointer. We're going to store that 1 in there. You've seen this many times before, so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. So we're going to say move 1 tile to the right. Then we're going to compare it to see, are we at the end of the line? And then, nope, keep looping. So at this point, we've done a whole line. Now we need to do all the rows. So at this point, we are going to the next row, reset to the left edge. Basically, just shift it over. And then we're going to say ADBW, map pointer, map width We're going to add the map width to the map pointer so that the map also goes down. So the LDY, we're just making sure that we start at 0. Move to the next line. LDA. I figure if we're going to do this, if we do this multiple times, we'll create a macro for it, but for now, we'll just keep it as is. We need to reload the map wall tile, and the reason why is because this ADBW uses the accumulator, and it doesn't reset it for us. So the problem is that, you know, if we use this, then the wall would be gone. So reload wall tile, because it gets overwritten. So now we're going to say advance vertical line index. Really would have been nice if the 6502 designers would have made it so that X or Y could have been used for this kind of notation, this 0-page indirect addressing mode. You have to use Y for this. And so it makes it kind of like I'm used to using X for horizontal and Y for vertical, but we can't. So, oh well, we just have to switch them. So now we're going to compare to see if map height, we're checking to see if we've gone all the way down all the rows. So we'll say check to see if all of the lines have been copied. And then, oh, keep looping. Okay, so we already have that. So our fill map will fill the map with walls. So we're already running that. So let's see, make sure it works here. Okay, so it didn't like new map and didn't like rooms. That's because we did not import this map gen file. So let's go in here. Just one of these errors. So let's go ahead and put it here, I guess. Sure. Map gen. Okay. Okay, so org rooms, rooms.asm. Thought I put it up here. Did I not? Rooms is here. Let's look at our thing. I think I know what maybe the problem is. Ah, yes. We need to move it there. All right, let's try again. Okay. We're all good to go. We now have a screen full of walls, which is what we wanted. Okay, now that we have our map that's filled with walls, we want to be able to choose a room, and then we want to choose where that room is going to go in the map. So let's go back to our map gen. We're going to go ahead and create a new procedure called choose room num. Okay. First, we're going to call random 8, get us a random number. Then we're going to load in rand. So get random number between 0 and 255. Load in. Now, we need a number between 0 and 15. So the way we can easily do that is we can say, is the number 16 or greater? If it is, then what we can do is we can shift it to the right so we can use the top 4 bits. If it's less than 16, that means the top 4 bits are 0, and we want to use the bottom 4 bits. So that's what this is going to do. We're going to say compare with 16. Check to see if value is below 16. And then if the carry flag is clear, that means that we're in between 0 and 15. So we're going to say BCC done. We're going to go ahead and create a new label for that, but value is 0 to 15. We're done. I'm going to go ahead and create this down here. And then we're going to actually use another variable called room num. And we'll do RTS MP. We got to set up this room num after we're done here. That's okay. So if we're going to say that we're going to need to shift it, we'll do the shifting down here. And so what we just need to do is do LSR 4 times. So we're shifting to the right 4 times so that anything that was in the high 4 bits is now going to be in the low 4 bits. Nice, easy way to do that. And then we're going to say otherwise shift right 4 times. Okay, so we need to set up room num. And I'm going to go ahead and put this over here, and we're going to say main, and we're going to go up here, and we're going to set up room num right here into A8. We'll probably move these things around later on, but for now we're just going to say room num equals A8. Okay, so now we'll say choose room num. We've chosen the room num. Now we're going to need to choose where it is in the grid. Now, something I just noticed is that our map width and map height are not where we want them to be. We want them to be 129 by 129, plus we need to add borders to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add another variable called border, or another equate. We're going to say we need 6, a width of 6 on either side, okay? And we also know the room width to be 15 and the room height to be 15 as well. Now, this map width, we want this map width to be based off of these room width and the border, okay? So we're gonna say room width times 8, because we're going to have it be 8 rooms wide, and we're going to need to have a door in between each of those. Now, we can count them up. It's going to be 7 doors in between 8 rooms. So we're going to say plus 7, and now we need to keep track of the border. The border is going to be 6 here, and we want it to be on the left and the right. So we're going to say border times 2. Okay, and we're going to have a same thing here, except for room width, we're going to say room height. They happen to be the same, but we'll just do it that way. I believe all the math will just work out right. The PEMDAS says, okay, this will happen first, and then it'll add these together. So it should all be good to go. So now that we have the room number, we need the room position, okay? All right, so I found a tool here that we can probably show where the map is going to be. So let's go ahead and say the map is going to be this, and we want to have the room start 6 over and 6 down. That's right, 6, something like this. Okay, so our rooms are going to be 15 wide by 15 tall. Okay, I'm not going to try to do this pixel perfect because that's just going to take way too long. But we're going to have a room that's going to look like that. Let's see, a little bit over. Not the best with drawing with the mouse, sorry. But we're going to have room or doors that are going to go in between like this. So the idea here, we want to know where to start because we're going to need to know where to put our map pointer. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a lookup table that's going to say where each of these points are, okay? And I've actually already done all that calculation, and it's a lot, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste it. So I'm going to say room positions. And so here's the start of it here. We have, these are the locations here. So the top row is going to be 0 to 7, then 8 to 15, etc., etc. So these are our room numbers. And these also are going to be the place in the array here, basically, that we're creating. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste it here. And I'll walk through it here for a minute. Okay. Now, I used some variables in here, so it makes it really, really wide. But the nice thing is when we get to a point where we change the border to 1 eventually, then all this will just work. So the idea here is, let's just walk through a couple of them. The border is going to be, so also something to keep in mind is this is going to be in Y, X format. We could have done it the other way, but everything we're having to do is going to be in that order anyway, so I just kept it in that order. So this is going to be 6 from the top. Then we're going to say the room height times 0. So this top row, this is just going to equate to 0 because it's we're not adding room height to it. Plus 0 here for the door. So this top one is just going to be a Y of 6 for all of these right here. Okay, all of these top 8 rooms, they're all going to be just at 6. Okay, and then for the X values, we're going to say border. We're going to start at the 6 at the left. Then we're going to add room width times 0 for the first room. So it's just going to be 0 plus 0. So it's still going to be 6. So top left is going to be 6, 6. Then if we're going to go to 1 over, then we're going to say the border plus the room width plus 1 for the door. And then room width times 2, etc., etc. So this is how it works going all the way down, all the way to 63. So in the bottom one, if you look, we have the room height times 7. So that's going to be all the way to the bottom. Then the room width times 7. It's going to be over on the right. So now we have this here. We need to make sure to load it in, and we also need to set this room positions variable. So let's go ahead and add, where did I put it? Okay. Rooms is that size. So I'm going to say room positions is going to be at AE 10. And this is going to be 128 bytes. And we have some free space right here. Okay. And we also need to load it in. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it right here, I suppose. This is right next to room, so this should be fine. And so now we have chosen the room number. We now have all the room positions. Now we need to actually place it in the map. To choose the room position, we're going to do something very similar to choosing the room number. So let's go ahead and create a new procedure. Choose room position. We're going to do a random 8 and say get random number, same thing, 0 and 255, load in ran. We're going to compare it now. Now, something to keep in mind, now we have a value between 0 and 63 that we want. So if we look at the bit, how the bits are lined up, if we have like 8 binary digits, these last 4 are going to be 0 to 15. Okay. Then we're going to add another bit. So that's going to be add one more power of 2. So this is going to be the 16. This is going to be 32. This is going to be 64. And then 128. Okay. And so if you have all the bits, you can go from 0 to 255. And so what we're going to need to do is just shave off the top 2 bits. Okay. The way we do that is going to be very similar to the way we did it to the choose room num. We're going to compare it with 64 instead of 16. Check to see if value is below 64. And we're going to do the same thing here by saying done. If it is, we're going to just go ahead and do the same thing, room pause, RTS, NP, BCC, done. It is between 0 and 63. We're done. And then if not, we're going to do 2 LSRs. Shift twice. I guess I'll say shift right twice. And that will get us the value that we need. So now we can say choose room pause. So the next thing we need to do is to copy the room into the map. But before we can do that, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make sure to place the up ladder, because otherwise we're not going to know where our player is going to need to go. So in order to do that, we're going to actually need to make a copy of that room in a temporary location in RAM, and then put our ladder somewhere in that room. So let's start that off by what we're going to do is we're going to create, so first off, what we're going to do is we're going to create a, okay, so to do that, we're going to need to set up some temporary space. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the RAM location here. I'm going to say temp room. And we're going to put that at 5208. And we're going to say temp room 225 bytes. Okay. And we are also going to need to put, we didn't put this on here yet, room pause. Okay, so that's going to be 8 or A9. We're going to need a couple more variables in here. I'm just going to call it room X, AA, room Y, AB, room pointer. We're going to need a pointer to deal with the rooms. I'll put that in AC. This is going to be a 16-bit, so I need to make sure to keep track of that. We're also going to need some temp locations here. So I'm going to say A, E, and we're going to use AF. Okay. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to copy the room into our temp room location. So go ahead and create this first. We're going to call it proc copy room. And then we're going to want to advance the pointer down for the rooms. Now, we've done this many times where we're just going to advance the pointer down. So because of that, I've actually created a macro to be able to do that. So let me just go ahead and paste this one, and I'll explain what it is. So I call it advanced pointer. And then we have the data that we're going to have the pointer point to, the pointer name, the width of like the number of columns. Count is the number of lines that we're going to want to go down, and offset is going to be the number of columns to go over after the fact. So we're going to load in the data into the pointer. Then we're going to make sure that the count isn't 0, because if it's 0, we don't want to be looping it and all that. So if it's 0, we're going to go down here to done, and then we're just going to add this offset. So the offset is like the X location. So we're going to add the offset at the end. If we pass in 0 though, and we don't do this check, it's still going to go through and add some to the pointer, and we don't want that. So that's why we need to do this check. So we're going to just go through and do a loop, and we're going to add the width to our pointer and just keep going through, compare it with count, and keep looping if needed. So we've used this method many, many times. Now we have a macro to be able to do that a lot easier. So we're actually going to use that. So we're actually going to use that here. So we're going to say advanced pointer. We're going to copy rooms to room pointer. And then we're going to want to go down room width times room height. Okay. So that's going to be, if we're needing like the 10th room, we're going to want to move down that many times, because one line is going to be the width and then times the height. So that's going to be one whole room worth. So that's going to be 225 bytes. We could just put in here 225, but we might as well just use the room width and height. So let's go down to the room number that we want with a 0 offset. Okay. Now we're going to want to use this temp room that we talked about. So I'm going to do temp room, and we're going to use temp adder 1, which we already have set up from before. Okay, so this is just a temporary address. Now we're going to load in 0 to Y. We're going to go through, and we're just going to load in the room pointer. We're just going to copy memory. Okay, we've done this before many times. Temp adder 1. So we're just copying it from one, moving it to the other, going up in Y, and then we're going to compare to make sure, see if we're done or not. Now, one advantage is that our rooms are 15 by 15, so we don't have to mess around with multiple X and Y to be able to get through those, because it's 225 fits in 255, so that makes it a lot easier. So we're just going to say compare with room width times room height 225, and then we're going to do B&E loop RTS and P. So that's our copy room. Okay. So all we're doing here is we're saying we're going to copy our room that we have chosen into our temp room location. Okay. And the next thing we need to do is go through that temp room and set up where we want our up ladder to be. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a place up tile procedure here. So we're going to say proc place up tile, and we're going to just do a loop, throughout, and I'll show you why. MWA temp room to temp adder 1, random 8. So we're going to pick a random number between 0 and 255. Now, the problem here is the room is 225. Instead of trying to shave off bits in order to make this work, it's not a real nice number. So what I'd like to do here is just call the random number generator until we're in the range of 0 to 224. Okay. So we're going to say compare room width with room height. B&E loop. First thing, we're going to just make sure that the number is in the right range. And we're just going to keep calling random 8. Now, the deal is that most of the time, it's going to be in that range. So we're not going to be calling this a ton of times. But this will work. Again, if we wanted to shave off other bits in order to make this work, you could do it, but I don't think it's going to work out very nicely. It's easier just to call it again. So now what we're going to need to do, we've picked a number now that is between our ranges that we want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add temp adder 1. So I'm going to add that random number that's in random 8. We're going to use this rand, because it's stored in rand. We know that. And we're going to go ahead and add that to temp adder 1. So we're choosing a location within our room to place this up ladder. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do this, and we're going to load in temp adder 1, and we're going to compare it to map floor. So we need to add that, of course. And this is 127, remember. And what we're doing is we're seeing if the tile that we're on is a floor tile. We only want to place our ladder on a walkable tile. Right now, all of our rooms have 100% walkable tiles, but in the future, we won't. In the future, we'll have some blank areas and stuff like that, so we don't want to place the ladder in a blank area, obviously. So we're going to check to see if it's a floor tile, and if it is not, we're going to do a B&E loop. So it's going to go through here and do possibly multiple times, depending on the room it picks, depending on the numbers that it picks, okay? When we get here, we know that we can place the up tile. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do map up, loading it in. We don't have a label for it. So let's see which one we need to load in. So if we look here, this is the last number here. This is the 127. So this is 126, 125, 124, 123, 2, 120. So map up is going to be 120. And map down, I might as well add it in here, equals 119. So it's the one before it. Okay. So let's go back to our map gen, and we're going to load in map up, and we're going to store it at temp adder 1. Okay. So we've now placed our up tile, RTS, NP. We still haven't copied it to the map. We've only updated the map or our temp room with the up tile, okay? But we need to call it here. So we've actually, we need to do place up tile. So now we've copied the room to temp, we've placed the up tile. Now we need to place it in the map, okay? So we're gonna call this one place room, okay? So the first thing we need to do is load in our coordinates for our room positions. If you remember, we created this whole room positions lookup table. Now we need to actually use that data, okay? So we've used room pause. Okay, we know what that is where the room position is. If you remember, it's going to be from 0 to 63, okay? Now, one of the things to keep in mind here is that we have 2 bytes for each one of these rooms. So therefore, we're going to need to multiply this number, whatever the room position is, by 2. Easy way to do that, we just use ASL, okay? So arithmetic shift left is going to be a multiply by 2. Then we're going to load that from the accumulator into the X register. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a couple comments here. Load in room position. And we're going to say multiply by 2 to because positions are 2 bytes wide, okay? And init X register, okay? Now we need to load in the data, okay? So we're gonna say LDA room positions, comma X, okay? So we're gonna have our X value that we've loaded in here, and we're going to say load the Y coordinate. And then we're going to store that in room Y. So we set up these variables. Save in room Y. Now we're going to go to the next value. So if we've read this value, for example, now we're going to need to read the next value. So we're going to say increment X. Then we're going to load in the room positions, comma X again, because we've incremented X. Now we're going to say load in the X coordinate. And we're going to store that in room X. Okay, so we've now got two variables set up, room X and room Y, that are going to be our locations in the map. Okay, so that's going to be very important on where we're going to be starting in the map. Now, we are going to be moving these room X and room Y around, and we don't want to touch those. So we're going to want to create temporary copies that we're going to be using. Okay, so that's what we use. We're going to use that temp X and temp Y that we set up. So I'm just going to say we're going to copy room X to temp X, copy room Y to temp Y. Okay. Now we need to move the map pointer over in the map where we want it to go. So we're going to say advanced pointer, map pointer, map width, room Y, because this is the amount of Y positions we want to go down, and room X. Okay. We used to have to do this with several lines, and now this is a lot easier with this macro. And we're going to say MWA temp room into temp adder. So using temp adder for that. Okay, now let's set up our loop. Put all these at 0. So we're going to load in the tile. And we're going to save it at map pointer. Okay, pretty straightforward so far. Now, we have a special case here, and that is when we see the up tile, we actually want to set our player locations to be right on top of that map tile. Okay, so we're going to do a compare to see if it's map up. Okay, if it is, we're going to do something, but if it's not, we're going to go ahead and put a label there. But if it is there, what we're going to do is we're going to move MVA temp X into player X. If you remember, that's the location where our player is located within the world. Okay, so temp Y into player Y. Next, we need to say we're going to increment temp X. So we're going to increment temp X. So we're just going to move over one square. Okay. Then we're going to increment Y. So it does the same thing, but with the Y register. Then we're going to compare that with the room width. We're going to see if we have gone all the way over on the room. And then if it's not done, we're just going to go back to the loop. Okay. So we're going to keep going through, and we're still doing our one line here. Now we need to be able to handle going down, to the next line. So we've seen the same thing before. We're going to move temp Y down. We're going to set Y back down to 0. And then we're going to say MVA room X to temp X. We're going to reset temp X back to the room X. And then we're going to say ADBW map pointer map width. So we're going to shift that down, and we're going to do the same thing. Adder 1, we're going to add room width to the temp pointer. Increment X, and we're going to see, are we done yet? So room width, or room height rather, B&E loop. So it's just going to keep going through until we've gone all the way through all the lines. And so this is the same thing we've done before when we're doing like the fill walls and all these things. Same idea. The only difference here is the fact that we're copying from source to destination, and we're doing this nice little comparison here to say, hey, is this an up tile, and do something special if it is. So then we're going to do NP. So now we need to do a place room here. Okay, so we've filled the map. We've chosen the which room number we're going to use. We've chosen where it's going to be in the map. We've copied it to a temp location. we added our up tile to that temp location, and then we're copying from that temp location into our map with place room. Okay, let's see if it works. It does not. Something broke.
A few moments later.
Okay, figure out what the problem was. It was just a typo. Basically, instead of doing in the place up tile procedure, I had B&E loop, and it should be BCS loop. Okay, so basically it was getting in this endless loop here, and it wasn't able to do anything. So now it should be good to go. We have our up tile placed on that wall, and we should have a very boring room, but yeah, that's okay. We are good to go here. Next time we're going to be having it so that we have doors that we can walk through, and have an actual map that we can traverse. So till next time, see you in the next adventure. Take care. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of this kind of content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. I post new videos all the time, and I wouldn't want you to miss any. If you'd like to see more of this series, be sure to click up here. And if you'd like to see something else, be sure to click up here.